Did you know you can get a Volkswagen 7-seater for less money than the equivalently sized Kia, Mitsubishi, Hyundai, Nissan, and even some Chinese rivals? That's right, the Volkswagen Tiguan Allspace offers plenty of value for money in some grades. This one, not so much. I'm going to run you through the range in this review. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and let's get to it. Earlier in 2024, Volkswagen decided to cut the prices for its Tiguan Allspace variants. Now, that means that you're getting 7 seats for the price of a 5-seater. So you could choose the 5-seat Tiguan, which is now in run out because there's an all-new version coming soon. And there's the 7-seat Tiguan Allspace for the same amount of money across most variants. Now, there are 4 different versions of the Tiguan Allspace to choose from. The entry-level version is called the 110 TSI Life. It's about 45 grand before on-road costs, and it seems to stack up as pretty good value for money. If you're okay with getting a smaller turbocharged petrol engine and front-wheel drive only, it could be a good choice for you. But if you want the same sort of spec but you want all-wheel drive, there's the 132 TSI Life as well, which gets a more powerful turbocharged petrol engine and the all-wheel drive system that you need. Now, there's also heaps of standard spec across those grades, things like LED lights, alloy wheels, and keyless entry and push-button start. You've got climate control. You've also got some really good features on the inside, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on all grades as well. So there's heaps of really nice stuff in all versions of this vehicle. And then if you want, well, a few more features, there's a couple of extra grades to choose from with more grunt as well. The 162 TSI Elegance is the next model up the range. You'll see the price for it on your screen now, and it adds a fair few extra features that you might really appreciate. And I mean, it's a bit more of a luxury take on this 7-seat family SUV. And then there's this one here, which is the 162 TSI R-Line. It's the sportier version. It gets a few features that you don't get in any of the other models. Different body kit, it gets 20-inch wheels, and it also gets different elements to the drive experience too. I'll get to them when we get inside the car and go for a drive. But hey, I've got some alternatives that you might want to consider, although this does stack up really well from a value for money perspective, even in the higher grade versions. Right now, my favorite alternative to this is the Hyundai Santa Fe, and it's a hybrid-only range at this point in time, although at the end of 2024, there will be a turbo petrol version available as well, if that's what you want, and it's going to be cheaper as well. So that might be perfect for you and your budget because, look, the prices for the new generation Santa Fe are up quite a bit, and you're looking at, well, almost $80,000 if you want the top spec version. This car is a lot less money than that, but hey, I think that the Santa Fe does cut its own sort of stance in the market. It looks fantastic in my opinion. Lots of people don't like the design of it, but I think it looks really cool, and it's fantastically spacious on the inside and really practical as well. Make sure you check out my full detailed review. The link's in the description. You'll also find links down there for my Kia Sorento reviews. So I've done a hybrid review and I've also done the diesel and petrol review. I think that the diesel is still the best pick in that range because it just seems to make a lot of sense. You can get it in more variants across the range and offers great value in some grades, but again, it also gets pretty expensive if you want it as a hybrid or as the plug-in hybrid, which is available. Again, you're approaching $75,000, $80,000 for that version if that's what you want. But hey, you can't get any hybrids in this car. There's another option that I reckon you should go and check out as well, the Skoda Kodiaq. Now, it is obviously from the same family as the Volkswagen, has all the lovely elements that you would expect, and the final versions of the current generation Kodiaq are on sale right now. There's an all-new Kodiaq coming in 2025, and it's going to be a really impressive thing, no doubt, because the existing one didn't even feel like it needed to be replaced. It was that good. So, tell me which one of those you would pick. Would you choose something different? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. From the front, it kind of looks like any other Tiguan, but when you look at it in profile, you can tell that the Tiguan Allspace is a bigger vehicle. It's 4.7 meters in length, and it has a longer wheelbase than the standard Tiguan as well, which means a bit more space on the inside, a bit more ease of access to the third row, which I'll show you when we get inside in a sec. But I want to show you the back end. There is a slight difference in terms of the design, but it's still a relatively compact 7-seater for a vehicle like this. All right, so let's take a look in the boot and see what we are dealing with here. Electric tailgate on this grade, and look, you can see for yourself there is a fair amount of space behind the third row seats. But let's have a look in here and see what we've got underneath this little covered section here. We have your cargo cover, which is actually pretty handy. And underneath there, you've got a space saver spare wheel as well, which is really lovely to see because I reckon that this sort of car should have a spare wheel. Now I'll put this back up and I'll just show you the easiest thing about this car is putting these seats down. It's as simple as going like that. And so long as the seats in front are in the right spot, you can just push them down, go like this. And now I'm going to show you the 5-seat volume figure for the boot space. And if you are planning to use this as a 5-seater, it is a very, very accommodating boot space. I reckon it could be a really good choice for someone who is planning to do that. If you just want some bonus seats, they stow away nicely and you've got a pretty flat section there to use. Now let's have a look at some of the amenities in the very back here. You've got these quick release levers, so if you do need to fold down those seats, you can just pull that and they will fold down, as you can see. You've got shopping bag hooks here. I love that there's shopping bag hooks. You've also got your spot for your cargo cover there. On the other side, as you can see, for the third row occupants, you've got some cup holders and there's no charging ports in the back except for this 12-volt port. So you could run a little charger that runs through there if you are going to have kids in the back all the time. On this side, you've also got one of those quick release levers, and it is a pretty practical space, I reckon, but hey, the tale of the truth maybe when it comes to the third row access. We'll get to that in a sec, hey? It might be about to be replaced by an all-new model in the next 18 to 24 months, but the Tiguan Allspace still feels really, really nice, and I think that the design is mostly very good. There are some elements that I don't love about the interior of this car. We'll get to them in a sec, but just have a look at this dashboard display. Obviously, this is the high-grade version, so it gets the biggest screen and it gets the big virtual instrument cluster as well, virtual cockpit or whatever they call it, and it is a lovely, colourful piece of design and tech, and there's a heap of different views available to you as well, including one with maps and so forth too if you need that. So you can jump through different elements of this design on the screen, and it really is a pretty nice piece of tech, I reckon. And obviously this screen here as well is your infotainment unit. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You've got built-in sat-nav as well if you want to use it. I've just been using the smartphone mirroring tech because, hey, I think that it is a pretty decent piece of kit. What I don't love about it is that you don't have physical dials for the volume controls. There is a gesture control system with this car though, so you can swipe from side to side and it'll just move for you. That's great, I reckon, in some instances, but maybe not as good as it could be in others, because you might be one of those people who gesticulates wildly when they talk. And look, I reckon that this part of the screen is actually a little bit more difficult. It's a bit hard to actually get your head around some of the menus on this screen, but if you're like me and you're the sort of person who just uses Apple CarPlay and, oh, come on, oh, wrong way. There we go. If you just use Apple CarPlay, you might find that it's perfectly fine for your needs. Right, so some other elements that I'm not so hot on. There are haptic sort of controls for your climate controls, and they are maybe not as good to use as knobs and dials or buttons would be, but at least you do have things like heating and cooling for your seats. And as you can see, there's also a little display that comes up if you do want to use the screen to adjust those elements. Yes, you can have it on heated and cooled at the same time, which is a bit strange, I reckon. I'll just turn those off. And look, I think that these, you will get used to it. You just got to be careful with your touchy-feelies, because if you are a bit heavy-handed or a bit clumsy when it comes to adjusting things, you might not find it to be the simplest piece of tech to use. I'll just turn the fan off so it's not as noisy. And I reckon that it is still a pretty nice thing. Oh, you don't get heated seats and cooled seats on every version of this car, so don't go thinking that you buy the base model you're getting that sort of stuff as well. You do get it in the top spec, and also in the top spec you get a heated steering wheel. The button's there, and yes, it's a haptic button. Yes, it's on the steering wheel. Yes, you will bump it, and you might bump other buttons on the steering wheel as well. I don't love this haptic button design on Volkswagens, and hey, Volkswagen doesn't even like it. They've replaced it on a bunch of other cars as well. So yes, the next generation version of this car, which will be called Tayron, not Tiguan Allspace, it'll probably have buttons. I hope it does. All right, down here, there's a couple of other conventional controls. This car has a semi-autonomous parking system. I never actually used that. It's got a surround view camera system in this grade because this one has the option pack fitted. So look, I reckon that if you like the surround view thing, that's pretty cool. It's a bit of an interesting design. It's not quite as high tech or usable as some of the other newer vehicles that have that sort of tech, but I think it's good enough. And you've also got your drive mode controller down here. So there are a bunch of different modes available to you. You've got a snow driving profile. You've also got your dynamic driving profile mode, so you can actually go into comfort mode and it will adjust the suspension. There's also progressive steering in this version, so if you put it into sporty mode, it actually drives pretty sporty, and you can change elements of it if you wish through the individual settings. So you might want your steering on normal, and you might want your drive mode to be sporty, you might want your dynamic chassis control to be comfortable, and that would be a pretty good mix, I reckon. But hey, look, there's a bit more to talk about with the drive experience soon. Down here, you've got a pair of cup holders, and they're these clever ones which you can push away, so you can have a bit more of a storage tray there if you wish instead, or you can just push those buttons and they pop out nicely. I love that. Put the key there as well, because I don't really know where else to put it. Oh, you got a wireless phone charger down there. That's why the key isn't down there. USB-C ports down there too. There's a small covered center console bin. Small is the operative there. And down in the doors, there are lined bottle holders, which is really nice to see. You do get a decent sized glove box, not huge, but big enough for this sort of car, I reckon. And here you've also got these lovely seats, which are sports seats with the R embroidery on them as well. And because this is the high grade version, it also gets the big panoramic glass roof as an option. You have to pay extra for it, which is a bit rude, I reckon. Lots of new cars have big glass roofs at no extra cost, especially if you're paying this kind of money, because this is a rather expensive version of this car. Okay, so I reckon that it is a pretty nice cabin. Let's check out the second row space and see what we are dealing with. Oh, have a crack at that. That's barely any legroom. It's terrible. Actually, that's because I've slid the seat forward to a much more accommodating space for anyone in the third row. But if I slide it back, if you're using this as a 5-seater, you have plenty of space. Look at that. This seat is set for me at 182 centimeters, 6 foot tall. I've got heaps and heaps of knee room in front, lots of foot room as well. I could have a dance party under there. There's map pockets and device holders on both seats. You've also got climate control down here and heated outboard seats as well, a USB-C port, directional vents, and this seat also slides forward on the other side as well. So it's a 60-40 split, so you can actually slide that seat forward if you need to make better space for whoever's in the very back row. And also you're getting things like a flip down armrest with cup holders too. And I reckon that it is a pretty nice backseat experience. Big bottle holders, again, with lining in there as well. Nice finishing on the doors as well, and ambient lights, which my little girl absolutely loved. That's why they're in purple. Now, headspace, look at it. Heaps and heaps. Anyone 6'3", 6'4" might find it a little bit cramped. Someone my height, just on 6 foot, I reckon it's pretty good. All right, I'm going to show you this third row situation. Right, so this is the smaller portion of the seat. So this is the 40 side, that's the 60 side. It's probably more like 70-30, but if you are putting a child seat on that side, which is where I put my daughter's seat, you might find that it is a little bit annoying to have to bring someone around to this side, to the road side essentially, and put them in the back. But hey, I guess that you have to deal with it, or you could just put your kid's seat on this side anyway. Oh, also, ISOFIX points, window seats, and 3 top tethers as well. But let's have a look in the third row. Now, I used to think that there was only one way to get into the back here, and that was to pull that lever. That will just fold that seat back down. But if you pull up on this tab here, you can actually push and slide that seat forward. That makes it a fair bit easier to get in. So let's have a look. This is not going to be fun. Just have a look how much space I've got there. Not very much. Okay, I've set the middle row seat to a position where I would be comfortable-ish for a short trip. Not comfortable, but ish. And look, that's about as much space as I had when I was sitting behind my own driving position. But if you've got a shorty who's the person who's driving, you might actually be okay to slide that a little bit further forward, because they'll be further forward, and then you'll have sort of enough space back here, at least in terms of leg room, but headroom, it's tight. It is not ideal for anyone sort of 170 centimeters or taller, I would say. And in fact, if you are planning to use it as a permanent 7-seater, there are definitely better options out there in terms of overall third row accommodation and the experience back here. But just keep in mind that you can fit 2 extra people in the back if you need to, and if you don't, you can fold those seats down, and it's a pretty good occasional 7-seater. But occasional, I would say, is the important element there. There are no child seat anchor points in the third row, so you can't use it as a proper family 3-rower, but I don't think that really matters. I don't think that's what this car is trying to be. And look, you do get a decent sort of seating position back here. It's not too uncomfortable. You've got cup holders or a couple of storage sections over here. And your view out is not too bad. You do get the sort of stadium vibe in the very back here as well. No charging port, as I said, in the boot section, but you could run a cable through if you needed to. And I think that it's okay. It's just not brilliant. Righto, let's talk powertrains for this model range, and it is what basically delineates the different variants in the lineup. So the entry-level version, the 110 TSI, it's a downsized turbocharged petrol engine, still with pretty decent power and torque outputs, but it has a 6-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission, and it's front-wheel drive only, so it might not necessarily be ideal for your needs. As I said, step up from there to the 132 TSI Life, you're getting a more powerful engine, and also you're getting a 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission and that all-wheel drive system, like I said, which you might need, you might not. It really depends on your situation. And then there are a couple of high-grade versions, the 162 TSI variants. This is one of them, gets a 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine with 162 kilowatts, as you probably guessed by now. Decent amount of torque as well, all-wheel drive, 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. It's the fastest one of the lot, no doubt, and it might be the most refined and enjoyable one of the lot as well, but it really depends on what you need if you're looking for a 7-seat SUV. And when it comes to towing capacity, there are some considerations that you need to keep in mind. I'll put the numbers on your screen now so you can see for yourself. Yeah, let's go for a drive, shall we? As I've mentioned a couple of times in this review so far, this car is the high-grade version. So it's the 162 TSI R-Line all-wheel drive, the faster, sportier one. In fact, the R-Line adds a few extra features like the progressive steering and the adaptive chassis control and those 20-inch wheels with Continental tires. All of that makes this a pretty driver-friendly car. In fact, a pretty driver-focused car. As I mentioned, there are a few different drive modes to choose from. I'm in comfort mode right now because I'm about to drive down Bumpy Street. That's not the name of the street, it's just a street near me that is less than pleasant when it comes to the ride comfort. And look, it is coasting beautifully over this. It's got a slightly firm edge to it. I think that's just a Volkswagen characteristic, but it does sort of lope along really beautifully. And yes, it's got 20-inch wheels with low profile tires, but you wouldn't know it in comfort mode. If you do put it into one of the sportier drive modes, you can feel it because it's got the adaptive suspension and there's a sport mode that does firm things up quite a bit as well. Speaking of which, there's also progressive steering with this car. So if you do want to have the sportiest drive experience possible, you just flick the switch and go to sport mode or into the individual mode and configure it that way so you can have it as sporty as you like. And I like that there is that element of tailoring that you can do to the drive experience in this car. It's got a lovely chassis tune to it, so it's beautiful in terms of the way that it changes direction. Even in comfort mode, it's really quite enjoyable to drive. And it's also very, very fast if you do put it into one of the sportier driving modes. So I'll put it into sport right now. And 162 kilowatts is no shortage of kilowatts. Yeah, it gets along pretty well, I reckon. It's pretty zesty, and it's got a pretty smart 7-speed dual clutch auto as well. With the all-wheel drive system, it really does sort of throw you out of corners when you need to be accelerating with a bit of pace. Look, it's not a Tiguan R. If you want a Tiguan R, you better get your skates on because it's basically done, but it was basically a performance SUV. This is not a performance SUV, it's just a faster, more lovable version of the Tiguan Allspace. And I've driven other versions as well, and I reckon that most of them are actually pretty good. The 110 TSI base model with the 6-speed dual clutch, I'm not as fond of, but I do think that it could make sense to you if you're on a strict budget and you want a 7-seater, you want it to be a German branded vehicle, because hey, for the money, it's really hard to argue that that isn't a great value option. So the engine has plenty of grunt. The 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission is very snappy in terms of its gear shifts and very, very likable and usable in most situations. It's just when you come up to a T intersection or something like that and you're in one of the sedate driving modes, I'm in eco mode right now, that at times it can just be a little bit laggy to take away from a standstill. But it's only really noticeable if you are hammering it from a standstill. And look, I don't drive like that normally. It's just if you're in a hurry to get across a intersection or something like that, you might notice it. And I don't necessarily think that you need to spend up to this version to get the best drive experience, but obviously there are some elements of the R-Line experience that do make it a bit more driver focused, so it could be right for you. It just depends on what your priorities are. But it's just a really livable car. It's got really sweet steering that's direct and accurate. You don't have to think, you just turn and it does exactly what it should. And also, it doesn't have any of those annoying safety nannies that make it, well, tedious to live with. There is a lane keeping system which you can disable by hitting the end of the stalk and then a button here as well. But look, you get used to all of the idiosyncrasies very easily, and you don't have to dive too deep into the tech in order to disable things that you don't like. And against some of the new rivals, that makes this a bit of a sweet vehicle, I reckon. All right, on your screen, you'll see a few different numbers popping up in this section. So we'll talk about the entry-level 110 TSI first. The official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for it is on your screen now. And look, obviously, the least powerful engine, it's pretty good on fuel, but hey, it's also maybe not the most joyful experience. And then there's the 132 TSI Life. You'll see the number for it on your screen, a little bit higher, a bit more power and torque, a bit of a penalty to pay there. It's not too bad though, I don't think. And then the 162s, and they are a bit more performance oriented. And look, if you can achieve that number, I think you'll be pretty happy. Over my time with this car, a week of testing, you'll see what I saw across a mix of driving, the same sort of stuff you might do. Urban, mixed roads, highways, freeways, all that sort of stuff. But I think that that's not too bad a result. What do you think? Just keep in mind, you also need to fill this thing up with 95 RON premium unleaded petrol, and you'll see the fuel tank capacity on your screen now, so you can do the maths as to how far you might get on your hundreds of dollars of petrol. This car used to have a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, but it expired in 2023. That gives you an idea that this isn't the newest family SUV on the market, but it still comes comprehensively equipped with heaps of standard safety technology and equipment, and none of it's annoying, which is a big thumbs up from me. All right, so it's got autonomous emergency braking. There's also lane keeping assistance, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. There's adaptive cruise control for all grades as well, which is good to see. You've got a reversing camera and front and rear parking sensors too, and those parking sensors also have this feature called maneuver braking, which can actually stop the car from hitting something or someone if it thinks you're going to and you aren't paying attention, which is really, really handy tech. The main thing that I don't love about this car in terms of the safety stuff is that a surround view camera system is only available as an option and only in the top 2 specs, so that's not fantastic. Now, what about airbag coverage? So you've got dual front, front side, and full-length curtain coverage as well. Volkswagen Australia offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is good for the class. And hey, there's also a 5-year prepaid service plan available for this vehicle, but it depends on which version you choose as to how much that service plan will cost. None of them are cheap. I'll put all the prices on your screen now for each of the different versions, and it varies by the powertrain that you choose. But no matter which one you choose, if you do go for a prepaid service plan, it'll save you hundreds and hundreds of bucks compared to if you pay as you go for your servicing. So you can roll it into your finance costs. And there's also a guaranteed future value offering from Volkswagen as well. It's called Volkswagen Choice. And if you elect to opt for that with your finance plan, it means you can guarantee how much the car will be worth at the end of your loan term. So that's kind of good to see as well. And if you service with Volkswagen, you also get roadside assistance topped up each time you go back. Good to see. Look, this top spec R-Line model with all-wheel drive is definitely fun to drive and definitely pretty punchy as well. But I don't think you need to spend this much to get a really good Tiguan Allspace. In fact, in the entry-level versions, I think you're getting a lot of value for money. more than Kia, Hyundai, Mitsubishi, Nissan, and even some Chinese SUVs. So I reckon that it does stack up pretty well, but tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. Would you go for a Volkswagen Tiguan Allspace? If you have one already, what do you think about it? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.